The Mage Council's summoning chamber had seen better millennia. Carved from a single mountain's heart, its walls bore the scorch marks of 10,000 failed rituals. 13 mages, all that remained of an order that once commanded armies, stood in formation, their life force pooling into what historians would later call the most expensive mistake in interdimensional history. "Bring us the Eternals!" rasped Archmagus Theron, whose beard had grown so long during the war that he'd braided it into his spell components. "Let the champions of the void answer our call." The portal they ripped between worlds wasn't supposed to target a Honda Civic doing 70 on I-95. It wasn't supposed to grab 4 people dressed for a weekend of pretend sword fighting. And it absolutely wasn't supposed to drop them directly into the middle of the Crimson Fields, where the combined forces of heaven, hell, and everything in between had been locked in a 3-day stalemate that had already claimed 6,000 lives. But the universe, it turns out, has a sense of humor. Chloe Carter's last coherent thought before gravity went sideways was that she'd spent too much money on her dark elf costume to die in it. The elaborately embroidered leather, the custom forged sword cane, the pointed ears that had taken 3 hours to apply, all of it was supposed to debut at the Northeastern LARP Society's midsummer event, not in an actual aerial descent into actual carnage. She hit the ground in a perfect 3-point landing, which could have been impressive if it had been intentional and not the result of tripping over a severed tentacle. "What the absolute—" Her words cut off as instinct took over. A blade, the size of a surfboard, swung where her head had been, wielded by something that looked like if anxiety had been given form and teeth. That's when Kenji Tanaka made his entrance. The retired professional wrestler hadn't planned to powerbomb a demon through the crust of reality. In his mind, he was still processing the shift from Highway to Hartford to reigning in a hell dimension. But 20 years of muscle memory kicked in when he saw something threatening his friend, and suddenly, a creature of shadow and malice was learning why Kenji had been banned from 3 wrestling federations for excessive realism. "The Crusher protects his party," he bellowed, then stopped. The demon wasn't getting back up. Its compatriots were staring. There was actual ichor on his vintage wrestling boots. "Oh, wait. My actions have consequences?" "It can't be real!" Amara Fields protested, though her assertion carried less weight, given that she was currently hovering 3 feet off the ground. Her comfort response to stress, dancing, had activated something in the local reality that was causing miniature auras to form around her sneakers. I was live streaming the road trip. I have sponsors." She moved through her anxiety the way she always did, with motion. A hip drop that sent shockwaves through the earth. Hand waves that turned the very air into ribbons of light. Her followers would have loved it, if her phone could get signal across dimensional barriers and if the spontaneous magical eruption wasn't currently freezing an entire phalanx of charging orcs into ice sculptures. Paul Delgado, meanwhile, had reached a state of fury so pure it had achieved enlightenment and come out the other side as transcendent annoyance. He stood perfectly still as chaos raged around him. A man who'd already dealt with a broken alternator, a tax audit, and his ex trying to claim his dog in the same week. His capacity for surprise had been strip-mined down to bedrock. So when a unicorn, magnificent, ethereal, with a horn that looked like crystallized moonlight, charged directly at him, Paul didn't think. He just reacted with the same energy he brought to every life inconvenience. His fist connected with its jaw with a meaty, cracking sound. The unicorn went down. The battle stopped. Every eye, compound, magical, divine, and otherwise, turned to stare at the stocky human in a flannel shirt who just cold-cocked a creature of pure light. "The prophecy!" someone screamed. "Shadow Dancer, the immortal, falls to the beast slayer." "The what now?" Paul looked at his fist, which was starting to glow. "Oh, come on! Come on!" A mark blazed to life on his forehead, a spiraling sigil that looked like someone had tried to write a doctoral thesis in pure light. Ancient words carved themselves into the air above him, in languages that predated speech. The breaker of steeds, the render of myths, the one who punches things that should not be punched. "I just wanted," Paul said to no one in particular, "to support my friends at their nerd thing. I had a cooler full of craft beer, good craft beer, the expensive stuff." The mark pulsed brighter. "I wasn't even going to dress up." Thunder rolled across a cloudless sky, which seemed deeply unfair. The immediate aftermath of their arrival could be best described as aggressive bewilderment. The armies of the Eternal War had protocols for many things: divine intervention, demonic possession, the occasional reality plague. They did not have protocols for 4 humans who seemed to be treating the apocalypse like a mild scheduling conflict. "Excuse me!" Chloe had found her voice, and more importantly, her director's instincts. She climbed atop a conveniently placed pile of what might have been bodies or very realistic props. She was choosing to believe props, and did what she did best: took charge through sheer theatrical presence. "Everyone, freeze!" To everyone's amazement, they froze. "This blocking is atrocious!" She gestured with her sword cane, which caught the light in ways that definitely weren't part of its original design. "You!" She pointed at a demon lord whose wings were currently on fire. "You're upstaging everyone with those flame effects. Tone it down. And you!" An angel wielding 6 swords looked startled as she singled him out. "6 swords? Really? Pick a character choice and stick with it." "She dares command us?" rumbled Virgil the Renderer, demon lord of the 7th Circle, whose resume included eating hope and making windows. "I dare critique," Chloe corrected. "There's a difference. Now, who's in charge of this production? Because we need to talk about pacing." Meanwhile, Kenji had found his people, or rather his people had found him. Warriors from every faction, drawn by the universal language of someone who knew how to throw down. "You power-bombed a pit lord," a scarred orc said with something approaching reverence. "Through the ground, into the substrata of reality." "Basic suplex, modified for extra impact," Kenji explained, already in teaching mode. "See, the key is using their momentum against them. Here, let me show you." What followed was the Eternal War's first impromptu wrestling seminar. Angels learned the finer points of aerial moves. Demons discovered the theatrical joy of heel work. A group of constructs made of living armor attempted a tag-team formation with mixed but enthusiastic results. "The Crusher believes in equal opportunity smackdowns," Kenji announced, demonstrating a chokehold on a volunteering troll. "In the ring, everyone's equal. Doesn't matter if you've got wings, tentacles, or ethereal forms of pure thought. Everyone can learn to sell a hit." Amara had given up on processing reality and decided to simply exist in it. If she was trapped in a shared hallucination brought on by gas station sushi, she might as well make it memorable. Her phone might not have signal, but muscle memory was forever. "Okay, let's see what we're working with," she muttered, beginning her warm-up routine. Reality, it turned out, was very responsive to her movements. A simple arm wave created light trails that hardened into crystal. A body roll caused localized time dilation. Her signature move, a spinning leap that had broken TikTok's algorithm, tore a small hole in space-time that smelled faintly of strawberries. "Teach us!" A younger demon, barely past its first century, approached with stars in its many eyes. "Teach us the magic of the... what did you call it?" "The renegade," Amara said faintly. "It's called the renegade." "The renegade!" the demon shrieked with joy. "Brothers and sisters, we learned the renegade!" Within minutes, she had a following. Beings of every faction began copying her movements, and with each synchronized step, reality hiccuped. Ancient wards shattered like spun sugar. Defensive spells inverted into aggressive complements. The fundamental laws of magic began rewriting themselves in real time to accommodate what was essentially a flash mob. Paul had found his own solution to the situation: aggressive maintenance. "Look at this," he muttered, examining a cursed ballista that had been firing screaming skulls. "No wonder it's cursed. They haven't cleaned the manifestation chamber in centuries. All this ectoplasmic buildup? That's not evil, that's negligence." He pulled out his toolkit, somehow intact despite interdimensional travel, and got to work. Within minutes, the screaming skulls were coming out as confused doves. "Beast Slayer," a nervous paladin approached. "The prophecy states—" "The prophecy can state these nuts," Paul interrupted without looking up. "Hand me that wrench." But you bear the mark. You're the chosen one." "I'm a mechanic from Southie who wanted one weekend without something breaking." He yanked out what appeared to be a soul-powered carburetor. "Yet here I am, fixing your doomsday weapons because apparently nobody in Magic Land has heard of basic maintenance." The mark on his forehead pulsed brighter with each repair, which only deepened his scowl. Above them all, letters of fire began writing themselves across the sky. 5 hours until the unmaking." "Oh, good," Chloe said brightly from where she'd gotten the demon and angel commanders to sit in a sharing circle. "A ticking clock. I do love dramatic tension. Though 5 hours seems arbitrary, why not 4 or 6? What's the dramatic reasoning?" It's just what the prophecy says," Celestine of the Thousand Hymns admitted, looking somehow diminished by the question. "Lazy writing," Chloe diagnosed, "but we'll work with it. Okay, people, we've got 5 hours to fix this mess. Someone get me a dramaturg and a cup of whatever passes for coffee in this dimension." The second hour of humanity's intervention in the Eternal War began with what historians would later call the most awkward ceasefire in recorded history. Chloe had managed the impossible. She'd gotten Virgil, the renderer, and Celestine of the Thousand Hymns to sit at the same makeshift table, constructed from shields and existential dread, without immediately trying to murder each other. "So," she said, pulling out a notebook she'd been carrying for her LARP character, "let's talk about your motivations. Virgil, you've been leading the demonic forces for how long?" 3 millennia, the demon lord rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "I have personally devoured the hopes of—" Great. Eating hopes. Very intimidating," Chloe made a note. "But why? What's your emotional core? What drives you? And please don't say darkness or evil, because those aren't character choices, they're placeholder text." Virgil blinked. I consume hope because—" He fell silent. The entire demon contingent leaned forward. "Because that's what demons do?" he finished weakly. "But what do you want?" Chloe pressed. "You, Virgil, the person. What gets you up in the morning? Besides the screams of the damned, I mean." The demon lord looked genuinely confused. "I used to paint, before the war. Landscapes, mostly. The Seventh Circle has the most beautiful sulfur sunsets." "Now we're getting somewhere," Chloe scribbled furiously. "Celestine, same question. What drives you besides goodness and light?" The angel shifted uncomfortably, her 6 wings rustling. "I uphold the divine order because—" "Because someone told you to," Paul interrupted, not looking up from where he was converting a soul-harvesting array into what appeared to be a functional coffee maker. "You're middle management who forgot to ask why they're managing." "How dare—" "He's right, though," Kenji added from where he was teaching a mixed group of orcs and angels the finer points of a proper dropkick. "You've been fighting so long, you forgot what you're fighting for. In wrestling, we call that losing the plot." "We fight because we must," Celestine insisted. "The balance." "What balance?" Amara called out. Her dance troupe had grown to nearly 300 beings, their synchronized movements causing reality to stutter like a broken record. "You've been killing each other for centuries." Meanwhile, Chloe had discovered something extraordinary in the command tent. Paperwork. "You have forms for this?" She held up a requisition order for Souls of the Innocent, Grade B or higher. This whole eternal conflict is bureaucratized? Well, yes, admitted Scrivener Malthus, a lesser demon whose job was apparently infernal resources. How else would we track quarterly soul quotas? Quarterly soul quotas? Chloe repeated flatly. You have quarterly soul quotas. The angels have them too, Malthus said defensively. They call them salvation metrics. That's when Chloe had her breakthrough. Oh my God, you're not armies, you're corporations. You're literally just corporate drones murdering each other for market share. She stood up, energy crackling around her that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with pure directorial vision. Do you have unions? Unions? Malthus squeaked. Labor organizations, collective bargaining, someone to make sure you're not being exploited by management. She gestured at the battlefield. Because from where I'm standing, you're all getting screwed by the cosmic equivalent of C-suite executives who haven't visited the factory floor in millennia. A ripple ran through both armies. Suddenly, 7 centuries of war looked different when framed as unpaid overtime. The Liches work 20-hour days, someone whispered. The cherubim haven't had a day off since the Third Age, another added. I haven't seen my spawn in 4 centuries because of mandatory battle attendance, a demon mother said quietly. Chloe smiled the smile of someone who'd once organized a strike at a community theater over costume budgets. So, let's talk about your working conditions. While Chloe was radicalizing the armies of heaven and hell, Paul had made a disturbing discovery. Your entire magical infrastructure is held together with duct tape and prayer, he announced, emerging from beneath what was apparently a doomsday device. And not even good duct tape. This is like dollar store duct tape, the kind that loses its stick in mild humidity. The apocalypse engine has functioned for eons, protested Artificer Corban, a dwarf whose beard contained more metal than most armies. Yeah, and my Uncle Chevy functioned for 40 years. Didn't mean it wasn't a death trap held together by rust and stubbornness. Paul wiped his hands on his jeans, leaving streaks of what might have been motor oil or liquefied destiny. Look at this. He held up a component that sparked with malevolent energy. This is your primary covenant seal. See this crack? That's why your reality is breaking. It's not mystical, it's structural failure. He'd gathered a crowd of artificers, smiths, and magically inclined engineers, all watching as he systematically dismantled and diagnosed their most sacred weapons. The sword of eternal darkness? Your binding runes are corroded. That's why it whispers about doom. It's basically magical tinnitus. The crown of infinite sorrow? Sized wrong. It's cutting off circulation to the brain, causing depression through oxygen deprivation. And this, he held up the Orb of Destiny. This is literally a magic 8-ball with delusions of grandeur. Reply hazy. Try again? Really? But these are artifacts of power, Corban sputtered. They're artifacts of bad engineering. Paul pulled out a wrench. Lucky for you, I fix things. It's what I do. It's all I do, apparently, even on my goddamn day off. The mark on his forehead pulsed with each repair, growing brighter as he worked. Every fixed artifact seemed to feed it power, which only made him work faster out of spite. You want to know why I'm the chosen one? He asked the growing crowd. Because I'm the only one here who brought tools instead of weapons. You've been trying to solve problems by hitting them harder for hundreds of years. Sometimes you need to just tighten a few screws and change the oil. Meanwhile, Kenji's wrestling school had evolved into something wonderful. The Eternal War's first cross-faction sports league. See, the beautiful thing about wrestling, he explained to a rapt audience of warriors, is that it's conflict with consent. Everyone agrees to the story we're telling. Nobody actually gets hurt. Well, not permanently. And at the end of the day, we all go get drinks together. He'd set up a makeshift ring using salvaged battle standards and was demonstrating holds on volunteers. An angel and a demon were learning to perform a synchronized flying crossbody. A troll was practicing his entrance music, mostly grunting, but with rhythm. A lich had discovered it had a natural talent for color commentary. "In this corner," the lich intoned, its voice echoing from beyond the grave. Weighing in at 600 pounds of pure celestial judgment, Gabriel the Granite-Fisted! The angel flexed. Wings spread dramatically. The crowd, a mix of every faction, cheered. And in this corner, representing the deepest pits of the ninth circle, give it up for Malgorth the Mildly Irritated! The demon waved sheepishly. He'd originally been Malgorth the Soul Render, but Kenji had suggested the rebrand. It was working. Remember, Kenji coached as they circled each other. It's about the story. Gabriel's playing the face, the hero. Malgorth's the heel, the villain. But it's just roles, performance. After this match, they're getting pizza. Pizza? Malgorth asked hopefully. I'll figure out how to make pizza happen, Kenji promised. The Crusher always delivers. If Chloe was organizing labor and Kenji was revolutionizing conflict, Amara was accidentally rewriting the fundamental nature of magic itself. It had started simply enough. The demon who'd asked to learn the renegade had friends. Those friends had friends. Within an hour, she had a following of nearly 1,000 beings, all moving in synchronization to her improvised choreography. Okay, everybody, 5, 6, 7, 8. She led them through the movements, not noticing how reality rippled with each synchronized step. Arms up. Now wave. Now hit that beat. A shockwave of pure creative energy erupted from the group, washing over the battlefield like a tide of possibility. Where it touched, weapons became instruments. Armor transformed into costumes. The blood-soaked ground sprouted flowers that bloomed in time with the rhythm. What's happening? A young elf asked, watching her sword turn into a ribbon that painted light across the air. I think, Amara said slowly, we're changing the rules. Magic, it turned out, was just another form of expression, and like any expression, it could be remixed, sampled, and dropped into a sick beat that transcended its original form. Magic through movement isn't new, explained Sage Therianus, an ancient wizard whose beard had its own gravitational field. But synchronized collective casting? The harmonic resonance of hundreds of beings moving as one? It's just dancing, Amara protested, even as her latest move caused a rain of golden light that tasted like sunshine. Just dancing? The sage looked offended. Young lady, you've cracked a problem we've been working on for millennia. Do you understand what this means? That I should probably stretch more before attempting interdimensional choreography? It means, the sage said reverently, that power doesn't have to come from conflict. It can come from harmony, from joy, from, what did you call it? Vibing, Amara supplied. From vibing, the sage threw his hands up. 700 years of war, and the answer was vibing! The dance grew. Angels learned to crump. Demons discovered ballet. A contingent of dwarves invented what could only be described as aggressive tap. Each new style added to the collective magic, creating feedback loops of pure creative energy. This is insane, Amara laughed, leading a move that caused miniature auroras to form around each dancer. But also kind of beautiful. The best things usually are, said her demon friend, now wearing a flower crown and absolutely killing the choreography. Above them, the countdown continued. 3 hours until the unmaking. But for the first time in centuries, the armies weren't watching the sky with dread. They were too busy learning the electric slide. The command tent had become ground zero for the Eternal War's first labor uprising, and Chloe was in her element. Let me get this straight, she said, pacing before a mixed crowd of officers from both armies. You've been fighting for so long. No vacation time, no hazard pay, no dental? Dental? Asked Commander Seraphax, an angel whose wings drooped with exhaustion. Yeah, dental, for your teeth. Those things you use to eat. Or do you not eat? Because that's a whole other labor violation. We sustain ourselves on faith and righteousness, Seraphax said weakly. That's not food, that's propaganda, Paul interjected, still elbow-deep in what appeared to be the reality engine's timing belt. You can't pay rent with righteousness. "What's rent?" asked a demon. The silence that followed was deafening. "You don't know what rent is?" Chloe said flatly. "You've been dying in a cosmic war and you don't even have housing costs. Do you have housing at all?" "We have barracks," offered General Morkoth. "Very efficient. Fits 1,000 warriors per—" "Barracks?" Chloe's voice hit a pitch that made nearby hellhounds whimper. "You're telling me you've been bunking 1,000 to a room for 700 years?" "It builds character," Morkoth suggested. "It builds resentment and communicable diseases." She whirled on the assembled leadership. "Where are your gods right now? Your cosmic executives? Are they bunking 1,000 to a room?" More silence. "That's what I thought. They're up in their divine realms, probably with individual planets as summer homes, while you're down here dying for their quarterly soul quotas." She pulled out her notebook, now filled with increasingly revolutionary notes. "We're forming a union, right now. Angels, demons, constructs, undead, everyone. The Eternal War Workers United." "We can't just stop fighting," Celestine protested. "The cosmic balance will balance itself a lot better when you're not too exhausted to think straight," Kenji called out from where he was refereeing a tag team match between former mortal enemies. "Trust me, I've been in the business. Burnout is real, and you've been burning for centuries." The meeting that followed was part group therapy, part revolutionary planning session. Grievances that had been buried under eons of conflict came pouring out. Mandatory overtime for apocalyptic events with no additional compensation. Exposure to hazardous materials, soul energy, divine radiation, corrupted mana, without proper safety equipment. Discriminatory practices in promotion. Angels with better wings got better positions regardless of merit. No clear job descriptions. Spread chaos was not an actionable feedback. Hostile work environment. Literally. "And don't get me started on the prophecies," added Scribe Malthos, who'd become Chloe's most enthusiastic convert. "Do you know how many times I've had to rewrite reality because someone upstairs decided the narrative needed more drama?" "Prophecies," Paul muttered from his workstation. "Fancy word for management changing the project scope mid-deadline." By the end of Hour 3, they had a charter. The Eternal War Workers United demanded 8-hour battle days with overtime pay, 2 days off per week, staggered to maintain the cosmic balance, comprehensive health coverage including dental, vision, and existential crisis counseling, transparent promotion practices based on merit, not species, an end to mandatory prophecy participation, regular team-building exercises that didn't involve murder. "This is unconventional," Virgil said, but there was something like hope in his eyes. "Do you really think we can change things?" "Hun," Chloe said, patting his enormous clawed hand, "I once got a community theater board to pay for actual costumes instead of suggesting actors provide their own. I've tackled harder battles than cosmic labor reform." Paul had moved from fixing individual artifacts to something far more ambitious, debugging reality itself. "See, your problem," he explained to a gathering of artificers, mages, and one very confused destiny spirit, "is that you've been layering patches on patches for millennia without ever addressing the core issues. It's like, imagine trying to run modern software on a computer from 1987. Sure, you can do it, but you'll need so many workarounds that eventually the workarounds need workarounds." He had reality source code spread out before him, literally, as it manifested as glowing runes that hurt to look at directly. But Paul had dealt with worse, trying to decipher his daughter's Common Core math homework. "This bit here," he pointed to a particularly snarled section, "this is your prophecy engine. It's calling the same function recursively about 8 million times. No wonder you keep getting chosen ones. It's stuck in a loop. Every time it tries to resolve one prophecy, it creates 3 more to handle the edge cases." "But prophecies are sacred," protested an oracle whose third eye was twitching nervously. "Prophecies are memory leaks," Paul corrected. "Look, I'll prove it." He pulled out what appeared to be a cosmic wrench and made a minor adjustment. Immediately, about 24 minor chosen ones throughout the battlefield suddenly found their mystical marks fading. "Thank the gods!" one of them shouted. "I can finally stop speaking in rhyming couplets!" "You had him speaking in rhyming couplets?" Paul asked flatly. The prophecy demanded nothing. It was a formatting error. He made another adjustment. There, fixed. Now he can speak normally, and the universe won't implode. See how easy that was? The mark on his own forehead pulsed angrily, as if offended by his casual dismantling of destiny. "Oh, you don't like that?" Paul addressed his own forehead. "Good, because I'm about to make your whole existence obsolete. Hey, everyone, gather round. I'm going to teach you how to jailbreak prophecies." What followed was perhaps the strangest technical workshop in the history of any reality. Paul taught beings who'd been slaves to destiny for eons how to exploit loopholes in their own prophecies. See, the trick is that prophecies are usually vague. The chosen one shall defeat the Dark Lord when the moon is full. Okay, but which moon? You got 3 of them. And what constitutes defeat? Could be a chess game. Hell, could be a dance-off. And wouldn't you know it, we've got Amara for that. A dance-off to determine the fate of the world? The Destiny Spirit looked physically ill. Why not? Makes as much sense as hitting each other with sharp metal until someone falls down. Paul wiped his hands. The point is, prophecies only have power if you play by their rules. So don't. Write your own rules. Make destiny work for you instead of the other way around. One by one, cursed individuals began breaking their bonds. A warrior doomed to die in battle realized battle could mean a battle of wits, and promptly started a philosophy club. A maiden, fated to be rescued, discovered she could rescue herself and charged the prince a finder's fee. A Dark Lord destined to be overthrown figured out he could just retire early and avoid the whole mess. "This is chaos!" the oracle wailed. "No," Paul said, making a final adjustment that caused several dozen prophecies to resolve themselves peacefully. "This is debugging. There's a difference." By hour 4, Amara's dance revolution had evolved into something nobody could have predicted. A magical flash mob that was accidentally rewriting the laws of physics. "I can't control it anymore!" she shouted over the sound of reality beatboxing. Yes, beatboxing. The combined synchronization of 2,000 dancers had caused the universe itself to start laying down a sick beat. "Just roll with it!" Kenji shouted back, currently teaching a dragon how to breakdance. "Sometimes the best performances are improvised." The dance had taken on a life of its own. Every participant added their own cultural movements, creating a fusion that transcended species, faction, and the normal limits of joints. Elves contributed flowing grace. Dwarves added percussive stomps. Demons brought the drama. Angels provided aerial work. The orcs mostly just jumped up and down, but they did it with enthusiasm. And with each movement, reality shifted. Not breaking, transforming. Where warriors once stood, artists emerged. Weapons became instruments. The drums of war became literal drums, laying down rhythms that made the mountains sway. Battle cries became harmonies. The air itself shimmered with possibility. "Is this what magic is supposed to feel like?" a young demon asked, tears streaming down her scaled face as she moved in perfect synchronization with an angel she'd been trying to kill an hour ago. "I don't know," Amara replied, leading a move that caused flowers to rain from the sky. "But it feels right." The sage Therianus was frantically taking notes, his quill moving so fast it was leaving small fires on the parchment. The harmonic convergence, the unified field theory of magic. It's all true. Magic isn't about power, it's about connection. "Could you maybe theorize later and dance now?" Amara suggested, pulling him into the crowd. "I'm 800 years old," he protested. "And you're about to learn the Cupid Shuffle. Age is just a number." As the sage discovered, he did indeed still have knees. The dance reached critical mass. The synchronized movement of thousands created a resonance that touched the fundamental frequency of reality itself. The ground beneath them began to glow, not with the harsh light of battle magic, but with something softer. warmer. It spread outward like ripples in a pond, and where it touched, transformation followed. The crimson fields, soaked with centuries of blood, sprouted wildflowers in every color. Weapons of mass destruction became musical instruments of mass celebration. Fortifications designed for defense reformed into amphitheaters. The very air, poisoned by centuries of curses, cleared into something that smelled like spring rain and possibility. "We're changing everything!" someone shouted. "No," Amara called back, executing a spin that created a small tornado of butterflies. "We're just letting everything be what it wants to be." Above them, the countdown seemed to flicker uncertainly. 1 hour until the unmaking. Maybe? Even destiny was starting to doubt itself. The sky cracked open like an egg filled with judgment and interior lighting designed by someone who'd never heard of subtlety. The gods descended in formation, each one a walking PowerPoint presentation of their domain. Corvanthor, god of war, 50 feet tall, built like a fortress made of muscle and poor anger management. Minerva, goddess of wisdom, radiating intelligence so pure it gave people headaches just looking at her. Fate herself, a constantly shifting form that showed you your worst possible future and your student loan balance simultaneously, and about a dozen others, all wearing expressions that suggested middle management discovering the warehouse staff had formed a union. "What?" Corvanthor boomed in a voice that made mountains consider career changes. "Is the meaning of this?" "It's a dance party," Amara said brightly, not stopping her movements. "Want to join? We're doing the Macarena next." "The Macarena?" The god of war's eye twitched. "You've disrupted 7 centuries of glorious conflict for the Macarena?" "Well, that and labor rights," Chloe added, stepping forward with her newly drafted charter. "Speaking of which, we need to talk about working conditions. Do you know your employees haven't had a day off since the Third Age?" "They're not employees," Celestine protested. "They're servants of the Divine Order." "Unpaid servants," Paul corrected, not looking up from where he was putting the finishing touches on reality's new operating system. "That's just slavery with extra steps and a dental plan you don't actually provide." "Silence!" Fate commanded, her form shifting to show everyone their most embarrassing teenage memories. "You dare defy the cosmic order?" "Lady," Paul finally looked up, covered in cosmic grease and thoroughly done with everything. "I've spent 4 hours fixing your broken reality. Your cosmic order is held together with string, spite, and what I'm pretty sure is magical bubblegum. So yeah, I dare. What are you going to do about it?" The gods exchanged glances. They'd prepared for a lot of things. Heroes with magic swords, dark lords with doomsday devices, plucky rebels with the power of friendship. They had not prepared for a cranky mechanic with a wrench and zero respect for authority. "You will return to your realm," Minerva commanded with the voice of absolute wisdom. "This is not your story to change." "Actually," Chloe said, pulling out her mock-legal LARP contract, "about that. See, when you summoned us here, you created what we in the theater world would call an implied contract. You brought us into your story, which makes us cast members, and as cast members, we have certain rights." "That's not how divine law works." "It is now," Chloe grinned, "because here's the thing about stories. They have rules, and you've been breaking your own rules for so long you forgot what they were. But we didn't. We're genre-savvy humans from a world where we've seen every possible version of this story. And you know what happens in every single one?" The gods leaned forward despite themselves. "The plucky underdogs win by finding the loophole the arrogant powers that be overlooked." She winked. "Surprise! We're the loophole!" "This is ridiculous!" Corvanthor raised his mountain-sized sword. "I'll end this farce myself." That's when Kenji stepped forward, and despite being roughly 1/50th the god's size, somehow managed to look down at him. "You want to fight? Cool. Let's fight." He cracked his knuckles. But we do it my way. In the ring, with rules, and a referee, and entrance music. You win, we go home. I win, you sit down and actually listen to your people for once in your eternal existence. You would challenge a god? Brother, I've wrestled in Detroit. You don't scare me. The tension could have been cut with a knife. If anyone had a knife that could cut tension and wasn't currently being repurposed as a musical instrument. I accept, Corvanthor rumbled. What? The other gods turned to stare. The mortal has challenged me to honorable combat. My nature compels me to accept. He shrunk down to merely 20 feet tall. Prepare yourself, mortal. I have been undefeated since before your son was born. Cool story, bro. Kenji started stretching. Hey, Amara, hit me with some entrance music. On it! The dance mob smoothly transitioned into creating the universe's first divine wrestling entrance, complete with light shows that warped space-time and a bass drop that registered on seismographs in neighboring realities. The wrestling match between Kenji, the Crusher, Tanaka, and Corvanthor, God of War, would go down in history as the fight that ended fighting. Trademark pending. A proper ring had been constructed from repurposed siege engines and dreams. The ropes were woven from the threads of fate itself. Paul had insisted on proper tension. The crowd, now thoroughly integrated, with angels and demons sharing popcorn, filled hastily constructed bleachers. Ladies and gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender, the Lich announcer's voice boomed across the field. Welcome to the match of the millennium! In this corner, weighing in at approximately 240 pounds of pure Philadelphia attitude, the Crusher! Kenji entered to a remix of Eye of the Tiger, performed entirely by repurposed war horns. He played to the crowd, high-fiving demons, chest-bumping angels, and giving a small troll child his bandana. And in this corner, weighing in at, the concept of conflict itself, the undefeated, the undisputed, the unnecessarily angry, Corvanthor the Eternal! The god's entrance was less choreographed but more ominous. Reality literally bent around him as he walked, leaving footprints that went down to the bedrock of existence. Standard rules, the referee, a nervous cherub in a striped shirt, explained. No killing, no reality warping, no summoning additional pantheons. First to pin for a 3-count or submission wins. And please, try to keep the collateral damage to a minimum. They touched knuckles, or in Corvanthor's case, touched knuckle to divine fist of cosmic retribution, and the match began. What followed was 20 minutes of the most ridiculous, dramatic, and somehow meaningful combat in the history of any reality. Corvanthor opened with a thunderbolt clothesline that would have vaporized a mountain. Kenji rolled with it, turning it into a backflip that had the crowd on their feet. "That's all you got?" Kenji taunted, bouncing off the ropes. "My grandma hits harder, and she's been dead for 20 years." The god roared and charged. Kenji met him halfway with a flying dropkick that actually staggered the deity. "Impossible!" Corvanthor gasped. "Nah, just good form. Here, let me show you." What happened next broke every rule of divine combat. Kenji started teaching Corvanthor proper wrestling technique, mid-match. See, you're all power, no technique. Wrestling isn't about strength, it's about storytelling. You gotta make them believe, make them care. Right now, you're just angry, but why are you angry? I am war. I don't need reasons. Everyone needs reasons, big guy. Even concepts, especially concepts. Come on, work with me here. What's your motivation? As they grappled, something strange happened. Corvanthor began to actually wrestle instead of just trying to obliterate. He learned to sell moves, to build tension, to work the crowd. I used to protect them, the god admitted, catching Kenji in a headlock that was firm but not fatal.
Before the war, I was the god who stood between mortals and the things that would devour them. But somewhere I forgot. I forgot the thing they needed protection from."
"There we go!" Kenji broke free, bounced off the ropes, and came back with a sunset flip. "Now we're getting somewhere. Use that. Channel it." The match transformed. No longer god versus mortal, it became a story. Corvanthor's journey from protector to destroyer and back again, told through suplexes and dramatic near falls. The crowd was entranced. Angels wept. Demons cheered. That small troll child was now wearing face paint in both wrestlers' colors. Finally, after a particularly spectacular exchange that involved Kenji powerbombing a literal god through a table made of crystallized time, both wrestlers lay exhausted in the ring.
I yield," Corvanthor gasped. "Not because you defeated me, but because you reminded me what victory actually means."
"That's the spirit, big guy!" Kenji helped him up. "Same time next week? We could make this a regular thing. Philosophical Wrestling Wednesdays or something."
"I would like that."
The crowd erupted. The chant started small but grew until reality itself vibrated with it. "Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit!" "Language!" Chloe called out, but she was grinning. Above them, the countdown read, 30 minutes until the unmaking. Pending review. While Kenji was revolutionizing divine combat, Paul had gathered the remaining gods around reality's exposed engine, preparing for the most aggressive tech support session in the history of existence. "All right, gather around, because I'm only explaining this once." He pointed to the tangled mess of fate, destiny, and cosmic law. "Your whole system is breaking because you built it stupid. Look at this." He indicated a particularly snarled section that sparkled with malevolent purpose. "This is your war subroutine. It's hard-coded to never end. See, right here. While existence equals true, war continues. That's not profound. That's a memory leak that's been running for far too long." "The war must continue," Fate protested. "It's written in the fundamental constants of—" "Lady, the only constant here is incompetence." Paul pulled out his wrench. "Watch and learn." He made a single adjustment. Throughout the battlefield, weapons began showing their best buy dates. Eternal Sword of Vengeance, best if used by the Third Age. Warning, may cause existential dread and tennis elbow if used past expiration.
"You gave our divine weapons expiration dates?"
Minerva looked appalled. "Everything expires, even wars, especially wars." Paul made another adjustment. "There. Now instead of eternal conflict, you've got term limits. Wars can last a maximum of 5 years before mandatory peace negotiations. Think of it as a cool-down period."
"But the prophecies
are now suggestions instead of commands." Another adjustment. Also, added a user review system. 1-star prophecies get automatically deprecated. Power to the people and all that. The gods watched in horrified fascination as Paul systematically democratized destiny. The Chosen One system? Now it's opt-in with full disclosure of risks and benefits. Divine intervention requires a 2/3 majority vote from affected populations. Apocalypses need environmental impact studies first. "This is chaos," Fate wailed. "No, this is accountability." Paul stepped back, admiring his work. "You've been running reality like a dictatorship. I'm turning it into a co-op. Everyone gets a vote. Everyone gets a share. And nobody gets to destroy the world without filling out the proper paperwork first." He made one final adjustment, and across the battlefield, everyone's divine marks became customizable. The Beast Slayer on Paul's forehead flickered and changed to Paul, I fix things. "Much better," he muttered. "Now, about this unmaking business." With 15 minutes left on the cosmic clock, Chloe took center stage. Literally. She had the armies construct an actual stage from battlefield debris and broken prophecies. "Attention, everyone!" her voice carried with the power of someone who'd once directed middle schoolers in Macbeth. "We have 15 minutes to prevent reality from unraveling. In theater terms, this is our 11 o'clock number, the big finish, the showstopper, and we're gonna nail it." She'd gathered representatives from every faction, the gods, now significantly humbled, and her fellow humans. "Here's the situation. The unmaking happens because the story ends wrong. Centuries of build-up with no satisfying conclusion equals narrative collapse. But we're going to give it an ending. The best ending. An ending so good, reality itself will applaud." "How?" Celestine asked. "The same way we've solved everything else," Chloe grinned. "Together. Chaotically. With absolutely no respect for how things are supposed to go." She turned to Amara. "How many dancers do we have?" "Everyone. Literally everyone. Even the mountains want in on this." "Perfect. Kenji? Ready to MC the greatest show in the multiverse?" "Paul? I've got reality running on a new operating system. Should hold together long enough for whatever insane thing you're planning." "Then let's save the world with the power of community theater." Chloe raised her sword cane. "Places, everyone!" What followed could only be described as aggressive collaboration. The armies formed a massive choir, their war cries repurposed into harmonies that made the air itself sing. Amara's dancers created visual stories with their movements, each gesture writing new possibilities into existence. Kenji narrated the epic of their 5-hour journey, turning chaos into mythology in real time. And the gods? The gods learned to be a part of the ensemble instead of the leads. "I don't understand," Corvanthor admitted, now wearing a staff t-shirt. "We're deities. We're supposed to be in charge." "Nah," Kenji corrected, adjusting the god's position in the choreography. "You're supposed to serve. Big difference. Now, hit your mark." The performance built layer upon layer. Former enemies sang duets. Chloe conducted with manic energy, her sword cane leaving trails of light that formed musical notes in the air. Paul's modifications to reality turned their performance into something that transcended mere art. It became creation itself. 5 minutes, someone shouted. "Amara, big finish," Chloe called. "On it!" The lead dancer stepped forward, and 2,000 beings moved with her. The dance they performed wasn't from Earth or the realms. It was something new, born from the collision of worlds and the crazy idea that maybe, just maybe, people were better together than apart. Reality held its breath. Then it exhaled in wonder. The unmaking began, not as destruction, but as transformation. The old reality, built on conflict and rigid prophecy, dissolved. In its place, something new emerged, something flexible, something that could grow and change and laugh at itself. 3 minutes! Paul, now! Paul made the final adjustment, not to reality's engine, but to its purpose. Where once it had been maintain conflict, now it read simply, enable joy. 1 minute! The performance reached its crescendo. Every voice, every movement, every beating heart in perfect synchronization. Not because they had to be, but because they chose to be. 30 seconds! Everyone! Chloe shouted. The final note! As one, the assembled multitudes, human, divine, demonic, angelic, and everything in between, sang a single note that wasn't a note at all. It was the sound of possibility, of choosing your own story, of the beautiful, chaotic, magnificent mess that came from people being people, no matter what species they happened to be. The countdown reached 0. The unmaking unmade itself. And in its place, dawn broke over a world remade. The Crimson Fields were now the Rainbow Gardens, though the name was still under debate. The trolls wanted Sparkle Meadows, but that was a hard sell. Where armies once clashed, a city was rising, built by all, belonging to all. So, Amara said, sitting on what once had been a throne of skulls and was now a remarkably comfortable recliner, We're really stuck here?
Afraid so,
The Archmagus admitted. He looked younger somehow. Apparently not bearing the weight of eternal war was good for the complexion.
The summoning was one way, but we've set aside resources.
I know, she waved him off. Honestly, I'm not that mad about it. My follower count here is insane, and they're working on their version of Wi-Fi. Magic-Fi. We're workshopping the name. Chloe had, as promised, been elected the city's first director. Not ruler, director. Her office was a theater that doubled as town hall, where decisions were made through a combination of democratic voting and dramatic interpretation. Next on the agenda, she announced to the mixed council, standardizing weekend days. I'm thinking Saturday-Sunday, but the Nocturnals want Wednesday-Thursday. Thoughts? Kenji's Wrestling Academy had become the city's primary form of both entertainment and conflict resolution. Legal disputes were now settled in the ring, with both parties agreeing to abide by the rules of a properly choreographed match. Remember, he instructed his latest class, it's not about winning, it's about telling the truth through combat. Also, hydrate, especially you, fire elementals. You lose a lot of moisture during matches. And Paul? Paul had exactly what he'd always wanted, a repair shop. Granted, he was fixing magical artifacts instead of transmissions, but the principle was the same. Things broke, he fixed them. The universe made sense. Next, he called out. A nervous angel approached with a flaming sword that kept spelling out embarrassing poetry. Haunted? Paul asked. My ex-boyfriend, the angel admitted. Ah, breakup curse. I'll need 20 minutes and a lot of sage. The herb, not the wise man. The mark on his forehead, now reading, Paul's repairs, no destiny too big, glowed softly as he worked. He'd made peace with it, mostly. It was like a name tag that wouldn't come off. Annoying, but ultimately harmless. You know, Minerva said, entering his shop, I've been thinking about what you said about accountability. Yeah? Paul didn't look up from his work. We want to formalize it. The former pantheon, I mean. We're forming a service organization. Deities for dramatic divinity. Would you consider being an advisor? Do I have to wear a robe? No robes required. Then maybe. Talk to Chloe first. She handles my scheduling now. Something about narrative pacing and character development. I don't get it, but she hasn't steered us wrong yet. Outside, the city hummed with life. Former enemies worked side by side. The arts flourished. Wars were things you watched in Kenji's ring, not something you died in. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was theirs. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the Rainbow Gardens, a small monument stood. It read, Here, 4 humans ended 7 centuries of war in 5 hours. Not through force or destiny, but by being aggressively, chaotically, beautifully human. May we all be so mortal. Under it, someone had graffitied, also, Paul still wants his beer back. Paul had seen it. He'd smiled. He'd left it there. After all, some things were worth remembering exactly as they were, even if they were annoying.